TC Jewfolk is supported by Maslin LLP, a Minneapolis commercial law firm dedicated to providing solutions for businesses, supporting the community, and advancing civil rights for more than 65 years. With particular appreciation of partner Leora Maccabee's contributions as a founder of TC Jewfolk, Maslin is proud to uphold the legacy of our founders Samuel H. Maslin, Marvin Borman, Hy Edelman, and Irving Brand. We are committed to serving both the community and the profession, as well as providing an exceptional standard in the practice of law. From corporate counsel to bet the company litigation, Maslin LLP. Online at maslon.com. Shana Tova to all. Welcome to this week's Who the Folk podcast. I'm Lonnie Goldsmith, the editor of TC Jewfolk. This week I talked to Craig Wasserman, who is one half of the new Moishe House Pod that has recently started up here in the Twin Cities. We talk about what brought him here this summer, his past Moishe House experiences, and what this pod has been up to in its first couple months on this week's Who the Folk podcast. Craig Wasserman, welcome to the Who the Folk podcast. Thanks for joining me.
Thanks so much, Lonnie. Pumped to be here.
Very excited that you're here. So you are one half of the new Twin Cities Moishe House Pod that has it officially kicked off in the Twin Cities now?
Officially opened as of August.
Okay.
And a little sneak peek is there's actually another one opening this October, as in a couple of days. So.
Wow. Oh, that's new.
Yeah.
Okay, I didn't know that was coming. That's a fun little surprise.
Exactly.
Oh, so a lot of people might be familiar with what Moishe House is, sort of as a house. There's, for those who don't know, it's a house that, anywhere from usually 3 to 5 people rent, and then they have a budget to put on sort of Jewish events, really aimed at sort of the 20 to 30-ish set. Am I hitting that right?
Yeah, exactly.
In their community that they're located. We had one here for almost 5 years here in the Twin Cities. And then just the way it worked, the person wanted their house back. The landlord was going to move into the house and actually use it. And that was the end of the Moishe House in the Twin Cities until you and your girlfriend moved to town and decided to apply. And now it is, at least for a little bit longer, just the two of you as the Moishe House in the Twin Cities. Did I pretty much summarize that right?
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah, pretty much.
All right, awesome. So what was it that inspired you to want to do it? Because now it's an application process. You have to proactively go. You choose to do it. To want to do it. What was it that made you want to do this?
Yeah, so my background with Moishe House, I have an older brother who's about 3 years older than me. Okay. And he moved out to Seattle after college and actually helped found the Moishe House out there. So that was my kind of first introduction to what Moishe House was as, a nonprofit that kind of caters to the young Jewish community post-college. So that's how I heard about it. And then I was living in Boston for a couple of years. And I knew a handful of people, but not a ton. So I would go to, different Moishe House events there. I think they have like 5 or 6 houses there. And that was just a great way for me to meet people and create some friendships. So I think I saw firsthand as a community member how beneficial Moishe House could be. So, and then ultimately an opportunity opened up at a house in Boston. So I moved in there. And then my partner actually moved to Boston from Minnesota, lived in my house. We started our relationship. And then our regional manager, ultimately, when we're just getting dinner with her, and they said, yeah, actually the Moishe House in Minneapolis is, not going to be any longer because of this thing. And, I think they would love a pod and you guys should totally apply. So we were pretty excited about the opportunity.
Oh, that's awesome. So I didn't realize that was, one of the things that I didn't know is that both you and Lee, your partner, were in a Moishe House in another city.
Yeah, but we kind of joke that we should be on the pamphlets. We're like the success story.
Yeah, I would say so. Kind of the poster children for the concept. So okay, so you have the experience of joining in a city that is large, really big city, really big Jewish community, and where there are several other Moishe houses. Now you're coming here where there are no other Moishe houses, and you're again there had been a presence, but you're sort of picking it up from you're sort of picking it up, but also sort of starting from scratch at the same time. Is that kind of what it feels like?
Yeah, it is kind of interesting because for all intents and purposes, we're doing the same exact thing of just hosting awesome programs and, trying to help people build relationships. But it does feel quite different to be in a city where we're kind of the only Moishe house in town, as opposed to in Boston, we would host a Shabbat dinner, but with 5 to 6 Moishe houses, people were bound to have overlapping dates for Shabbat dinners or
Right.
events.
Did you
But
did you coordinate with the other cities in terms of trying to not like counter program each other?
Not too much. I would say there was more just like partnership, like we would host events together to kind of
Okay.
because each house, I think, had a little bit different of a reputation and just had different communities that were sort of attracted to each house. So I think we, instead of being like, oh, I don't want to plan this event when you're planning that event, it was more collaborative of like, hey, I think, the Cambridge and the Brookline community could really, you know, um, do this event together.
Okay. So given the experience that you have, it's got to be nice to not be starting from zero in terms of your knowledge, right? Like not just what Moishe House is, but how to put on events and what kind of events people tend to gravitate towards.
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely nice to have some background experience of kind of what works and doesn't work. I mean, obviously, the last year and a half has been a moving target for sure.
Very, very
Um,
much so.
but honestly, even like most jobs, you know how sometimes you just got to get ramped up on a system. I don't know how to use Salesforce or whatever it is, but so with Moishe House, it was really easy to jump into this pod because we know how all the kind of systems work, who we need to reach out to with specific questions.
And the pod concept is relatively new, right?
Yeah, I think maybe 1 or 2 years old.
Okay. For people that don't know, what's the difference between like the traditional house and the pod that we're going to have here in the Twin Cities?
Yeah, so the only difference is a pod is typically 2 people. A lot of times it's people that are dating or married, but it doesn't have to be. It could just be, 2 roommates.
Okay.
Um, but we just host 3 events instead of, for example, my previous house was hosting 6 events a month. So it's
Wow.
just you host less events. Yeah,
Okay. And of
but
course,
that's
now, like you said, I mean, now the last 18 months has been sort of hard to comfortably host. I would think, right?
yeah. For a while, it was all virtual,
Hmm.
um, and I think most people have had their experiences with virtual events and tend to not be super stoked about them. And especially, I think with Moishe House, where you really are trying to build friendships and connect people. It's just not always the easiest medium to do that. Um, But that being said, for example, like, I don't know, April 2020, I hosted a Zoom Shabbat dinner and I was honestly very nervous about it. I was like, I don't know if anyone's going to come. This could just be kind of awkward. And we ended up having, I think, 35 people on the Zoom call.
Wow.
And yeah, and we did this thing called Rosebud Thorn, where you just kind of give the best thing that happened to you that week, kind of the worst thing that happened to you that week, and something you're excited about. And we just had people popcorn. So each person would, I would say, hey, Lonnie, you tell yours, and you would tell the next person. And it was a really amazing event and it felt very communal in a time that was very hard for a lot of people being kind of stuck in their house.
Right. I mean, and that was early. Like we didn't even know what was ahead of us at that point.
Yeah. Um, yeah. And then now, since we've been in Minnesota, we've just been trying to host all our events outside for the time being while we can. We had a break fast on our front yard, set up some lights, got some bagels. Yeah, and we had had a bunch of Shabbat dinners outside. So trying to make people comfortable.
Oh, that's awesome. So what was it that brought you to the Twin Cities? Like you said, you were in Boston until recently. What brought you here?
Yeah, so my partner got a new job here that she needed to be on site for. And I'm very lucky. I'm a recruiter, and my job is super easy to do remotely. And I could just pick up and move. And my boss was totally cool with it. So,
That's nice.
yeah, no, it definitely was.
I'm sorry, your
Well, anyway,
partner's.
I'm curious.
Sorry.
How long have you been doing the podcast?
The podcast we've been doing for 3.5 years now, I think.
Wow.
I remember who the first guest was. I don't remember I want to say it was April of 2018. Or maybe it
That's
was 20.
impressive.
Thank you.
Almost 4 years going. That's awesome.
Or maybe it was 2019. Literally, I can't remember. I know it was April, and I know who the first guest was. It was a local weatherman who I'd been wanting to interview for a while, and I got the opportunity. And we had just had the largest snowfall in April, I think, in the Twin Cities history. I think we had like 16 odd inches of snow, and I remember the date of it because it was my daughter's birthday that day, and she handled that really well, let me tell you. And we had a friend's my oldest daughter had a friend's bat mitzvah that day, and getting to services was a nightmare, and they eventually canceled the party because the roads were so bad that nobody should have been driving on them. This is before Zoom was a thing. The Zoom bat mitzvah definitely would have happened that day if it was possible. But no, so yeah, it was 2018 then. So yeah, almost coming up on 3.5 years at this point. It's been great. I got to talk to some really interesting people.
Yeah.
People
No, I
doing
mean,
really interesting things. This is kind of the fun part of my job.
yeah. I mean, that's so impressive too. I mean, I've, checked you out on Spotify, and you put out content super regularly, which I know can be pretty difficult for podcasters because it's not simple to find the guests, make the time to do the recording. So huge kudos to you.
Well, thank you. I appreciate it. No, it's not always the easiest thing. And obviously we do schedule around the holidays some. And yeah, like sometimes I'll have somebody planned and they'll say, hey, I can't do it. Actual important work intrudes. And so we have to go dark for a week. These things happen. I mean, this is the nature of the beast.
Yeah. I'm not asking you to pick favorites, but are there any episodes or guests that really stand out to you?
Oh, I think episode 100 might be one of my favorite ones. As a soccer player who was playing for Minnesota United at the time, Aaron Schoenfeld, who was Jewish. Who's from Knoxville, I believe, Tennessee. Came to Minnesota United from Maccabi Tel Aviv, where he had played professionally for like 4 years, and it was I was going to interview him in person in early March of 2020, and that was the first work casualty of COVID for me. Was very late notice, canceled my interview, and said we're not doing any interview. Media's not allowed in, and so we're gonna. We'll push it off for a while and so you can come in and do it. And that day never happened. But as it turned out, when I finally got to talk to him was episode 100. And the really fun thing I got to do with that interview is that in 2019, the U.S. women's national team, it was Labor Day of 2019, the U.S. women's national team played at Allianz Field in St. Paul, where Minnesota United plays. And his girlfriend, Abby Dahlkemper, plays for the U.S. women's national team. And while the team was doing the lap around the field, sort of lap of honor after the game, and the fans are all applauding, my youngest ran down to the sideline, and this player, Abby Dahlkemper, was taking pictures with a bunch of with fans, and so I was able to get her attention, and my daughter got a really nice picture with her, and it happened to be the girlfriend of the player that would get to interview 10, 11 months later. So I held up my phone and showed him the picture. He thought it was pretty cool. So awesome. That was one of those, fun moments of technology that worked out there.
Love it. Yeah. As a sports enthusiast, I look forward to listening to that episode.
It was fun. We had a really, We had a good time. It definitely would have been more fun in person. I used to coach soccer, so I nerded out a little bit on some things, but there's like so many fun stories. I think I really would have been easier to get into, at least in person, um, rather than Zoom. But that's how it goes. And he has since signed with, I think he's playing for the team in Austin now.
Mhm.
Hopefully he's healthy enough. Kept having injury issues. So you say you're a sports enthusiast. Who are your teams? Where are you from originally?
So originally from Maryland,
Okay.
grew up my whole life there. Went to college at the University of Maryland. Terps
Okay.
just are on a three. Uh, they're 3-0 right now.
They are.
They come to play the U. I think in October. So hopefully I'll be at that
I was
game.
going to say, you got your tickets already, or
Not yet, but I'll be looking. That's for
oh, good,
sure.
good.
Yeah. So grew up there my whole life, but my parents are actually Boston sports fans. AKA, I'm the most blessed person of all time because I've seen championships in every major sport. Brady won a six. And then when I moved to Boston in 2018, I moved there in September. The Red Sox win the World Series in October. Patriots win the Super Bowl in February. And where my office is directly looks down on where the parade comes by. It was pretty close to like the mayor's office. And I mean, I was just beyond thankful. And
The Bruins were in the Stanley Cup Finals that year.
yeah, they lost in game
That was
seven, which was absolutely brutal. I was watching at a bar right outside TD Garden, but
that would have been that. Let me tell you, the rest of us who aren't Boston fans, we're okay with a little slump would be okay for you guys. We're kind of tired of it.
I was actually talking to someone about this pretty recently. We were talking about how, some people, when their sports team, loses on Sunday, whether it's football or some other sport, like they could be in a funk that day. They could be in a funk all week. And I'm a diehard sports fan, but I don't know, that doesn't resonate with me so much. Like I'm passionate and I'm into the games and I obviously want my team to win. But at the end of the day, whether they win or lose doesn't really change my life. And I think honestly, experiencing a lot of championships actually like prove that point even more so because you're like, it's amazing to win the Super Bowl. Trust me. And like, I hope Vikings fans get that soon. But, you know, like you're the same person. Like you still have the same challenges, you have the same successes. It's cool, but it doesn't change your life.
Well, here's the thing. I'm a Detroit fan, so I had a lot of success early on in my life as a sports fan. The '84 Tigers, um, Pistons won back to back in the late '80s, early '90s. Back to back Red Wings in the late '90s. More Red Wings in the early 2000s. The Pistons, the Lions are the one constant in my life that is awful. And I've long said if I had to give up one day of football on the weekend, I could give up Sunday, but you can give me college football all day. So I'm okay with that. Like I would, look, I want the Lions to win a Super Bowl, but I don't know if it's, I think it comes with age, and I think it also comes with not living in the town of my teams. And I haven't for 22 years. I've been out of Detroit now, almost half my life. I just can't, I got other things. I got 2 kids to make sure get places. I've got a dog who's barking at me to play fetch with him as we speak. You might hear him here. And so I got other things. I don't live and die with it the same way as I used to when I was a kid. I don't know if it's maturing or what, but it happens.
There's got to be balance with everything.
For sure. I mean, look, I still will get up at 6:30 in the morning to watch Manchester United play. At 12:30 British time kickoff on a Saturday morning. And I still love watching. I still love watching all my teams, but I just the losses tend to roll off my back a little bit easier than they used to.
Yeah. And what about you? What brought you to the Twin Cities?
I have family here. I can say with some certainty, the first place I ever traveled to, at least certainly by plane, was Minnesota. My aunt, cousins, who at the time I was growing up lived in St. Paul. Now they're sort of all around the metro, but came here, been here, visiting here my whole life. and my wife is a lawyer, and she out of law school at Northwestern. She had sort of decided if she could have stayed in Chicago, and I would have had a job there and been just fine, and she would have been working stupid hours, and I probably been working a lot of nights, and we would not see each other very often. And Minneapolis is great for the work-life balance. I know it's very cliche, but we've really found it. So, and we've been here 19 years now.
Wow, that's amazing.
And I really hope Minnesota United does well, because bringing it back to sports, because that's like the only local team that I have fandom of. Everything else is about, I'm still a Detroit fan.
Right. I gotta get your thoughts on Mouse at the Palace.
I haven't watched the documentary. I've heard it's Indiana Pacers propaganda, and I'm not here for anything that slanders the Bad Boy Pistons or Detroit in general.
Fair enough.
So as you're sort of, okay, let me back up a sec. Do you feel sort of established here in the Twin Cities, or are you sort of getting your sea legs still?
No, I definitely feel pretty established. I think the only thing that I'm continuing to build are the relationships.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously, that is just something that takes time. You know, 2 months in a city and you know every person. I mean, I think we've done a good job. We've gone to some YJP events and just met people. I've met pretty much all of the former Moishe House residents.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah, and they're all really great. So I think that's the part we're still trying to build up. But obviously, with Lee having a background here, she knows a lot of folks. But we're really excited to meet people, and I really hope that we get a lot of Minnesota natives as well, because something I've heard in the murmurings is that they're kind of like there's transplant communities and there's native Minnesota communities in terms of like the young Jewish scene.
Yeah.
And obviously, I mean, anyone and everyone is welcome. So I hope we get a good mix.
What do you know about the new pod that's going to be starting up? Do you know who the folks are? Have you been in touch with them?
Yeah, we got some beers with them at Bauhaus.
Okay.
Yeah, they're nice.
Okay.
Nothing too crazy to report.
Not yet, at least.
Exactly.
I'm just sort of curious. I guess I'm just sort of curious. Again, being the size community we are, it's always been just the one house covering, I guess, mostly Minneapolis, but obviously St. Paul folks always welcome. So I'm just sort of curious how the relationship with having two pods is going to work and sort of either detract from or amplify the work you're trying to do.
Yeah, I think it will definitely be an amplifier.
Okay.
I think, when you're talking about, say, a Boston where there's, 5 to 6 houses, then you can get more into that question, I think. But at this point, there's just more events. It's in a different location. And hopefully that will be, better for some people. So they're in Longfellow and we're in East Harriet.
Okay.
So a little bit of diversity there. But yeah, I mean, I think the more events, the better. And I think something else that's really great about Moishe House, and one of the reasons I was drawn to it, is because it really allows like young people to be leaders. And whether that's the people that live at the house or community members, I mean, if a community member had a cool idea for an event, I mean, I could pretty much just let them run with it. I'm happy to help, but they're so open to whatever type of event you want to do, whether it's like social justice focused, just a social event, something that's more like learning oriented. They definitely let you find something that you're passionate about.
That's great. I mean, and I think people won't necessarily, hopefully people won't be shy in telling you what they think works and what they think doesn't. Because obviously that feedback, I would think, has to be really important and go a long way to helping devise what kind of programs you want to have.
Yeah, I think we haven't received, and this is not just in Minnesota, this was also in Boston. Mm-hmm. I think it's on the people that live in the house or the pod to seek out that feedback.
Yeah.
Because people aren't necessarily just going to, tell you whether something was great or not great, or, if they have an idea, if you don't give them the opportunity to present that idea, you don't know if, you'll ever hear it.
That's fair.
But yeah, and I mean, yeah, Moishe House, it really is an amazing organization. Like obviously I met my partner there, so I'm super appreciative from that sense. But I grew up in an Orthodox community.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Okay.
And I'm no longer Orthodox. I'm kind of more traditional cultural, but I still have a lot of passion for Judaism and the traditions and the holidays. But I think Moishe House is a really great organization, just because they are a great kind of way to still celebrate your Judaism, even if it's different than it was the way you grew up.
Did it, based on what you saw from your brother's experience in Seattle, how is your experience with it so far? Has it been pretty, is it consistent? I mean, obviously Seattle, regional differences aside, right? Seattle is its own kind of place, but is it sort of been consistent over the sort of different experiences you've had?
Yeah, I would say it's, similar.
Hmm.
I think it might have been a little bit different when I was in Boston, just because Moishe House is a little bit more established there. And the house that I moved into had been around for, I don't know, 7, 8 years.
Oh, wow.
As opposed to he was kind of the one who really helped pioneer and find the first members to live in the house out there.
Got it.
So I think that experience a little bit more resembles Minneapolis, where, we're the only pod for now, although not for long.
Right.
But I don't know. Yeah, I mean, that definitely the pandemic throws a real wrench, or not a wrench, but it's definitely a huge difference between mine and his experience,
For sure.
because we don't really know necessarily what the winter is going to look like yet.
No, that's true. We're obviously hoping for good things, but who knows?
Exactly. For now, we'll take the good weather.
No, absolutely. Enjoy it while we still can. Oh, excellent. Well, Craig, last two questions, and we will let you go. First of all, what is your favorite Jewish holiday?
Favorite Jewish holiday? Big fan of Purim. That's for sure.
I feel that'd be a fun Moishe House holiday.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I think it's a great one because I feel like it's a great experience for all ages. Kids dress up, kids get candy and do shloch manot. College kids get hammered in their dorm rooms. It's great.
And Hamantashen. So
And Hamantashen.
Can't go wrong. What is your favorite Jewish food?
Favorite Jewish food? I don't eat them as much as I would like to, but knishes. Good knish.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Have you had? I don't. I mean, I suppose not as yet, but had an opportunity to experience much of the Jewish food scene here, such as it is.
Not a lot of the Jewish food scene.
Okay.
But yeah, I'm definitely open to recommendations.
Excellent. Well, Craig Wasserman, thank you so much for joining me. It was great to meet you and get to talk to you, and we look forward to seeing how you and Lee get the first Moishe House Pod up and really rolling here in the Twin Cities.
Thanks so much, Lonnie.
The Who the Folk podcast is part of the Jew Folk Podcast Network, a product of Jew Folk Inc. Please subscribe, rate, and review the show wherever you get your podcasts. If you have suggestions for other podcast guests, please email them to me at editor@tcjewfolk.com. For our other shows, check out tcjewfolk.com/podcast.